John Rambo, one man who's been pushed too far.
What if I told you that the Rambo you know rarely made it to the big screen? Behind the sweat, blood, and survival of First Blood lies a story just as wild as the movie itself. From shocking casting choices to dangerous stunts gone wrong, the film was packed with secrets Hollywood never wanted fans to find out. Get ready, because these are 10 hidden truths about Rambo. First Blood you were never supposed to know.
Don't push it. Don't push it, I'll give you a war you won't believe.
10. The original ending was shockingly dark.
Got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against...
When you think of Rambo, you instantly imagine the unbreakable warrior who somehow survives every impossible situation. But here's the hidden truth. First Blood almost ended with Rambo's death. In the original novel by David Morrell, John Rambo doesn't make it out alive. He is cornered, broken by the weight of war trauma, and ultimately dies in a final confrontation. Hollywood's first script followed the same tragic path. In fact, they even filmed an alternate ending where Rambo convinces Colonel Troutman to shoot him, bringing his story to a bleak and heart-wrenching close. The idea was to show the devastating cost of war on soldiers who return home only to feel like outsiders in their own country. But Sylvester Stallone saw something bigger. He believed audiences needed to see Rambo as a survivor, not just another casualty. Stallone argued that while Rambo carried pain and scars, his fight to live made him a symbol of resilience. The studio reluctantly agreed, and Rambo was spared at the last moment. That single decision didn't just change the film, it reshaped movie history. Instead of ending with tragedy, First Blood sparked an entire franchise, transforming Rambo into a cultural icon. If the original ending had stayed, the world would never have seen Rambo tie that red bandana again. 9. Al Pacino almost played Rambo.
I want you to book this gentleman for vagrancy, resisting arrest, carrying a concealed weapon.
It's hard to imagine anyone but Sylvester Stallone stepping into the boots of John Rambo, but Hollywood originally had a very different vision. Before Stallone was ever considered, several legendary names were tossed around for the role. Al Pacino was one of the strongest contenders, with others like Robert De Niro, Clint Eastwood, Paul Newman, and even Dustin Hoffman also in talks. But here's the twist: Pacino actually came close to sealing the deal. Pacino wanted to play Rambo as an unhinged, near madman who completely loses control. He envisioned a darker, wilder take that leaned heavily into the character's instability. While that approach might have mirrored the more brutal tone of David Morrell's novel, the studio worried it would alienate audiences. The character risked becoming a violent monster instead of a sympathetic hero. When Stallone entered the picture, he brought something no one else could: raw vulnerability mixed with brute strength. He rewrote much of the dialogue, toning down the savagery and adding depth, making Rambo less of a lunatic and more of a broken man searching for a place in the world. That human side is what connected with audiences everywhere. If Pacino had played the role, Rambo might have been remembered as a cautionary tale, but thanks to Stallone, he became a lasting symbol of survival, strength, and the scars of war. 8. Stallone rewrote the script.
Don't worry about the soapy stuff. Just shave it, drag. Don't move. I don't want you to cut your own throat.
One of the biggest secrets behind First Blood is that Sylvester Stallone didn't just star in the film, he practically reshaped the entire story. When Stallone first read the script, he was shocked at how one-dimensional Rambo was written. In those early drafts, Rambo came across as a cold-blooded killer, leaving a trail of bodies with almost no remorse. Stallone knew this wouldn't work. He wanted audiences to connect with Rambo, not fear him. So, he stepped in and made major changes. Stallone rewrote huge sections of the script, stripping away unnecessary violence and focusing instead on Rambo's humanity. He made sure Rambo didn't actually kill the deputies hunting him, turning them into victims of accidents or their own recklessness. This change transformed Rambo from a mindless action figure into a sympathetic veteran, haunted by trauma, but not driven by cruelty. Stallone's rewrites also gave Rambo quieter, emotional moments that revealed his pain, especially in the heartbreaking final scene where he breaks down to Colonel Troutman. The producers were hesitant at first, but Stallone's instincts were spot on. His version gave audiences someone they could root for instead of just another tragic figure consumed by rage. Without those rewrites, First Blood would likely have been forgotten as just another violent 80 seconds thriller. Instead, Stallone turned Rambo into a layered, tragic hero, and that's why the movie still resonates decades later. 7. The film nearly didn't get made.
You've gone as far as you're gonna go! Heading straight for the top.
Something most fans don't know. First Blood almost never reached the big screen. The journey from David Morrell's 1972 novel to the 1982 film was filled with false starts, failed deals, and endless rewrites. For nearly a decade, the rights bounced around Hollywood like a hot potato. Different studios bought and sold the project, while dozens of directors and actors were attached at one point or another, but nothing seemed to stick. At one stage, it was meant to be a gritty, small-budget character study. At another, studios envisioned it as a high-octane war film with over-the-top action. The constant tug-of-war over tone and casting delayed production for years. Some actors turned it down because the character was too violent, while others didn't want to risk playing a Vietnam veteran during a time when the war was still a sensitive subject in America. It wasn't until Carolco Pictures finally backed the project and Stallone signed on that things started to fall into place. Even then, the film faced resistance, as some executives doubted audiences would accept a story about a troubled veteran fighting small-town cops. But Stallone's star power and creative vision pushed it forward. What seemed like a cursed project finally came to life, and against all odds, First Blood became a box office hit. If the film had collapsed during those rocky years, the world would never have met one of cinema's most enduring action heroes. 6. Real injuries on set.
There he is! On the cliff!
Action movies often look dangerous on screen, but with Rambo, the danger was very real behind the scenes. Sylvester Stallone pushed himself to the extreme while filming First Blood, and the physical toll was brutal. During one of the chase sequences, he performed a stunt that required him to leap off a cliff into the branches of a tree. The fall didn't go as planned, and Stallone ended up breaking several ribs when he slammed into the branches. In another sequence, he badly injured his back, forcing him to push through the pain just to finish filming. The actor later admitted that much of what audiences saw in the movie was him gritting his teeth through real agony. He chose to keep many of those shots in the final cut because they gave the film raw authenticity. Stallone wanted viewers to feel Rambo's suffering, and his own injuries only added to that realism. Most stars would have used a stunt double for such risky scenes, but Stallone's dedication helped make Rambo believable as a man fighting both his enemies and his own breaking body. The result was a performance that felt gritty and real because it was real. Every wince, every labored movement wasn't just acting, it was Stallone actually enduring the punishment of his own stunts. That commitment is part of what turned Rambo into more than just another action hero. 5. Rambo was based on a novel.
Don't push it, I'll give you a war you won't believe.
Long before Rambo became a movie icon, he lived on the pages of a book. In 1972, author David Morrell published his debut novel, First Blood, introducing the world to John Rambo. But here's the twist. The Rambo of the book was even darker and more dangerous than the one Stallone brought to the screen. Morrell's Rambo was a drifter and Vietnam veteran who waged an all-out war against a small-town sheriff's department. Unlike the film, the book doesn't soften his actions. Rambo kills many people, and his downward spiral is more tragic, with no redemption waiting at the end. The novel was a sharp critique of how America treated its veterans after the Vietnam War. It portrayed Rambo as both victim and monster, a man shaped by violence and unable to escape it. Hollywood saw potential in the story, but knew it would need changes to appeal to a wider audience. That's where Stallone's influence came in. He reshaped Rambo into someone audiences could empathize with, a man scarred by war but still human at his core. Even with the changes, the DNA of Morrell's novel is all over the movie. The themes of alienation, survival, and the clash between soldiers and civilian life stayed intact. Without that book, Rambo might never have existed. It was the foundation that gave rise to one of cinema's most enduring action characters. 4. Filming conditions were brutal.
Teasel, you and all your men couldn't handle him before. Now, what makes you thinking?
What you see on screen in First Blood, the damp forests, icy rivers, and endless cold, wasn't just Hollywood magic. The cast and crew really endured those punishing conditions. Filming took place in British Columbia, Canada, where the weather was freezing, wet, and unpredictable. Stallone, in particular, faced some of the worst of it. He had to perform many scenes wearing only a thin shirt or no shirt at all, while temperatures hovered close to freezing. Imagine running through snow-covered mountains, drenched in icy water. While cameras rolled, it was as miserable as it looked. Stallone later admitted that he was constantly cold and on the verge of hypothermia during certain takes. The rugged terrain only added to the danger, with slippery rocks, cliffs, and dense forests making every stunt a potential disaster. Crew members struggled with equipment freezing and constant rain, but the harsh environment actually worked in the film's favor. The misery you see on Rambo's face wasn't faked, it was Stallone truly suffering in the wild. These conditions gave First Blood its raw and gritty authenticity. Instead of a polished Hollywood backdrop, the wilderness felt alive, dangerous, and merciless. It became more than just scenery. It was practically another character in the film. That realism is one of the reasons the movie still feels intense. Decades later, you're not just watching Rambo survive, you're watching Stallone endure. 3. The knife became iconic by accident.
Knows what damage he's prepared to do.
Few movie props are as legendary as Rambo's survival knife. Sleek, sharp, and designed for survival, it instantly became part of Rambo's image. But here's the surprising truth. The knife wasn't in the original novel at all. It was added for the film, almost as an afterthought. Stallone and the filmmakers wanted Rambo to have a tool that symbolized his survival skills, something practical yet memorable. They turned to knife maker Jimmy Lyle, who crafted a custom blade that wasn't just intimidating, but also functional. The knife had a hollow handle that could store survival gear, a serrated edge for cutting through obstacles, and a design rugged enough to fit a hardened soldier. On screen, it wasn't just a weapon, it was a lifeline. Rambo used it to stitch his wounds, build traps, and navigate the wilderness. That attention to detail gave the knife a presence beyond a simple prop. It became an extension of Rambo himself. What no one expected was how audiences would react. The knife exploded in popularity, with replicas flooding the market after the movie's release. It became a cultural symbol, representing self-reliance, toughness, and survival. Without it, Rambo might not have had the same iconic look. The red bandana may have been his trademark, but the survival knife cemented his image in action movie history. 2. The sheriff's character was softened.
Got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against...
Sheriff Will Teasel, played by Brian Dennehy, is one of the key figures in First Blood. At first glance, he seems like the classic small-town bully who pushes Rambo too far. But here's what most fans don't realize: the original drafts painted him as far more cruel and one-dimensional. In the early versions, Teasel was written as a ruthless figure, almost cartoonishly evil, with little motivation other than hatred for Rambo. That setup would have made the story a simple battle of good versus evil, but Stallone pushed for something different. He believed Teasel needed depth, not just malice. Stallone worked with the filmmakers to give the sheriff a sense of pride, authority, and stubbornness. Teasel wasn't just a villain. He was a man who saw Rambo as a threat to his town and refused to back down. This made the conflict more compelling. It wasn't about pure evil against pure good, but about two strong-willed men clashing in a way that spiraled out of control. Brian Dennehy's performance captured this balance perfectly. His Teasel wasn't a monster, but a flawed man whose decisions had devastating consequences. That choice made the story richer and gave Rambo's struggle more emotional weight. If Teasel had remained a one-note villain, the film wouldn't have carried the same intensity or realism. Instead, the sheriff became one of cinema's most memorable antagonists, a man whose humanity made the battle with Rambo all the more tragic. 1. Critics hated it at first.
You don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare.
It might be hard to believe now, but when First Blood first hit theaters in 1982, critics weren't impressed. Many dismissed it as just another violent action flick, lumping it in with the countless shoot-'em-ups of the era. Some even complained that the story glorified violence or painted law enforcement in an unfair light. Reviews were mixed at best, and few predicted the movie would go on to become a cultural phenomenon. But audiences told a different story. Viewers connected with Rambo's struggle, his pain, and his fight against a system that rejected him. Word of mouth spread quickly, and the film became a box office hit. Over time, critics who once shrugged it off began to revisit the movie and appreciate its deeper themes of trauma, alienation, and survival. What once looked like a simple action thriller revealed itself to be a layered story about the scars of war and the difficulty of reintegration into society. The turnaround was so strong that First Blood is now considered a classic, not just in action cinema, but in storytelling about veterans. Decades later, the same critics who dismissed it admit they underestimated its power. The film's success paved the way for sequels, merchandise, and Rambo's permanent place in pop culture. What began as a disposable action movie ended up rewriting Hollywood's idea of what an action hero could be. So, there you have it, 10 hidden truths about Rambo, First Blood, that Hollywood never wanted you to know. Behind the gunfire, explosions, and survival, this movie was built on near-death stunts, bitter cold, rewritten scripts, and choices that could have ended the franchise before it even began. If just one decision had gone differently, like keeping the original ending or casting Al Pacino instead of Stallone, Rambo might have vanished into obscurity instead of becoming a worldwide symbol of strength and resilience. But here's the real question. How many more secrets are still buried behind the movies we think we know best? If you loved uncovering these hidden truths, hit that like button, share this video with fellow movie fans, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the untold stories behind cinema's biggest icons.